101.1, The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues, where you can sound off and talk back at 501-401-1011. As I mentioned a little bit earlier on the show this afternoon, the libs have found us. Now, I hear from people on a regular basis like, hey, man, how come you left this other station? Well, I got fired because I wouldn't get the COVID vaccine. What? We've been looking around for you. I'm glad we found you. And that tends to be conservatives. And yet, the libs would call in every once in a blue moon at the other station because they either hate you or love you, or hate to love you or love to hate you, or, whatever. So the libs have found us because a whole lot of them responded angrily to a post I had on the Doc Washburn Show Facebook page last week, and they're very concerned that I'm an Islamophobe and a bigot and all this kind of stuff. So, because I'm concerned about the Islamization of Arkansas. Having said that, our friend, Professor Robert Steinbuck, wrote an op-ed in the Demgaz last Friday about a jihad-friendly Muslim professor up at University of Arkansas at Fayetteville. And so if you're thinking, well, golly, I'm thinking about U of A, Fayetteville, as calling the Hogs, Wool Pig Suey. And let me see. You got the Razorback football team, which disappoints us pretty much most years. You got the Razorbacks basketball team, which tends to be pretty good. Calipari's probably even better than Musselman. You have the Razorback baseball team, which a lot of people don't even know about, which is always, always really good. But wait a minute, what do you mean there's an Islamic professor up there that, well, anyway, Professor Steinbuck will be on with us out of the 5 o'clock news, and he will give us the lowdown about that and how that fits into the Islamization of Arkansas, which, by the way, I don't care what anybody says, I'm going to go on record right now that that's a bad thing, and we need to put a stop to it. Okay, well, got a lot more audio. In the meantime, Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gaub, Army retired, was on Fox earlier today talking about the rescue mission. We went behind enemy lines in Iran to get our guy over the weekend.
This mission was probably the most complicated thing we've ever put together and the most focused. And I was impressed by what happened, the number of assets, how complicated it is, and how it went. Sure, there were issues. We blew up some of our own equipment on the ground to keep the enemy from getting a hold of it. But in the end, the mission that matters is that we recovered our own and we brought them home. And it's great news that they're launched to headed to the U.S. soon, because that means they're recovering very quickly. This is a message to every American who might want to join the military, who supports the military, and everybody who would seek to oppose us, that we will go to the ends of the earth to make sure that our people come back to our home, to our homeland. And also, by the way, we're still looking for those who are missing from Korea and Vietnam and otherwise. So we need to be thankful for all the good that is happening now.
Amen. Never leave them behind. Well, I mean, if you have an actual American in the Oval Office, now obviously Obama was, and Hillary for that matter, were all about leaving them behind in Benghazi. They were all about it. And of course, Dementia Joe Biden, he was all about getting a lot of our people killed in Afghanistan. Now, most folks, they might know about the 13 service members that were killed in the when the suicide bomber, the Taliban suicide bomber, showed up at the gate to the big international airport in Kabul, Afghanistan. They might know it would not have happened if Biden, well, probably Obama through Biden, hadn't ordered us to evacuate the Bagram airfield about 30 miles up from there, which would have been secure and nobody would have gotten killed. But they probably don't know. They probably don't know that we left hundreds of Americans over there. And who knows what the Taliban did to them. But that's just fine with Barack Hussein Obama and Joseph Robinette Biden. And obviously, just about any Democrat office holder. They've made it clear they're more concerned about the illegal aliens than they are American citizens. Couldn't care less. Couldn't care less about you and me. Now, why on earth they don't get questioned more about this? Well, let me just say this before we get to more audio. I think it's great. There's a PAC out there warning people about Hallie Schaffner. She's a Democrat nominee, going to run against Tom Cotton in November. And regardless of what you agree or disagree with Senator Cotton on, I guarantee you letting Democrats take over the U.S. Senate will be orders of magnitude worse than any concern you have with Tom Cotton. So I'm glad that there are PACs out there running commercials. Hey, who is Hallie Schaffner really? And telling you what a wild-eyed liberal radical she is. But in the meantime, well, you know how it is. You know, every time a Republican says something that might be construed as being embarrassing, every time a Republican might get involved in some kind of scandal, then the media always has their microphones in the face of other Republicans, demanding that they condemn and repudiate whatever it was that this other Republican said, sometimes halfway across the country, sometimes you haven't even heard of it. But nobody does that with the Democrats. Nobody plays guilt by association with the Democrats. I just need to get that off my chest. All right. Now, having said that, I don't know if you have heard what's up lately with Tucker Carlson, but his videos have been going viral. He is condemning Protestantism. He's saying that Protestantism is not Christianity. And he is also out there saying that real Christianity is unavoidably associated with socialism. And he is condemning President Trump for having the gall to mock Islam and saying that President Trump also really loves murdering people. Tucker Carlson is saying all of that. He's saying that President Trump is going to use nuclear weapons in Iran to kill 92 million people. But I'm old enough to remember when he got into his big argument with Ted Cruz last year, and he explicitly stated that the United States should use nuclear weapons on Iran if it could be proven that Iran was trying to assassinate President Trump. And they did try, by the way, because one of the men in one of the plots was convicted in federal court last month. So I want to share with you, I don't know if you remember a show called Red Eye. It used to come on Fox News Channel in the middle of the night with Greg Gutfeld and TV's Andy Levy. And we have a clip of TV's Andy Levy talking to Tucker, and Tucker actually saying, this is back in the day, 10, 12 years ago, Tucker actually saying that he believed that Iran deserved to be annihilated. If we could run that one. Oh, we don't have it. Okay. All right. Well, we're having technical difficulties. No, I don't expect you to take my word for it. When we overcome our technical difficulties, like the old song said, someday, any day now, I shall be released. When we overcome our technical difficulties, we'll play. Oh, we got it? Okay, there we go.
Tucker, aren't we the only country allowed to make preemptive strikes? Who the hell does Iran think it is?
Actually, I know you're sort of kidding, but I agree with that. I think we are the only.
No, I'm not kidding at all.
Rather, we are. That's absolutely right. The only country with the moral authority sufficient to do that. The only country that doesn't seek hegemony in the world. I do think, I'm sure I'm the lone voice in saying this, I think Iran deserves to be annihilated. I think they're lunatics. I think they're evil.
Oh! Boy, he sure doesn't think that anymore, does he? See, this is the problem when your principles or what passes for your principles are for sale. Anybody who's paying attention believes that he has flipped. He used to warn about Islamic immigration into the U.S. Anybody who's paying attention, now he says, well, Islam simply means submission to God. What could possibly be wrong with that? So when your principles or what passes for them are for sale, you're literally willing to rationalize anything. It was written 2,000 years ago. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Don't ever let anybody tell you that money is the root of evil, but the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And we see that on a daily basis with Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Alex Jones. You know, Nick Fuentes, Megyn Kelly, unaffectionately given the nickname Grandma Groyper. They've all flipped. And that's fine because, you know, I'm just going to keep on doing what I do. And we are commanded to speak the truth in love. Oh, CNN is saying there will be a deal between the U.S. and Iran that could be finalized by tonight. Well, CNN is saying it, then you know we're going to hit them. Say that's good. I thought I would do. Anyway, all right. More breaking news, more audio coming up for you as the Doc Washer Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. Apropos of nothing, the great Jeffrey A. Tucker, president of the Brownstone Institute, the guy that if it weren't for him, if it weren't for the Brownstone Institute, I would have no idea that Anthony Fauci was not the head of the White House response to the COVID-19 fiasco. Most people thought he was because he did most of the talking. If it weren't for Jeffrey A. Tucker and the Brownstone Institute, I would have no idea that Dr. Deborah Birx, remember the woman with the scarf stood there next to Fauci, was actually the director of the White House response to COVID-19. And I would have no idea that when Trump finally put Scott Atlas in there, it took him 2 or 3 months to figure out how she got her job because she had no background in public health or epidemiology. She was an AIDS researcher. And Scott Atlas said, I knew that Trump didn't appoint her to the job, so who did? Well, Deputy National Security Advisor in Trump's first term, Matthew Pottinger, who had earlier been a journalist who spent years in China. Imagine that. Anyway, Jeffrey A. Tucker out there this afternoon saying this. 6 years ago, Trump had promised a reopening of society by Easter, but it didn't happen. And that's because he had already granted another 30 days of lockdowns after Deborah Birx pleaded for it. After he acquiesced to her, he suddenly wondered if something was up, that maybe these freaks didn't have his best interest at heart after all. He stopped speaking to Dr. Deborah Birx. A month later, he started making noises about opening up, but by then, unfortunately, President Trump had lost control of everything, and the deep state was driving the agenda. He was unable to roll back what he had started. The lockdowns lasted until the elections in most places via mail-in ballots that he had approved without realizing it. And oh my goodness, the responses to this. And now Dr. Deborah Birx is a contributor on Newsmax. Very disappointing to see. I mean, come on, seriously? Look, we don't like all of the contributors on Fox. I was shocked they started using General David Petraeus recently. I'm like, wait, what? Really? Because I remember how he lost his job. And I remember what happened after he lost his job and the scandals and everything. But so some conservatives are like, well, Fox is too liberal for me. And I prefer Newsmax, yada, yada, yada. But you see this and you're like, well, I'll tell you one thing. When news breaks, I don't care if you like Fox or not. When news breaks, they're all hands on deck. And Newsmax isn't because they don't have enough hands on deck. And that's the way it is. And it's like that. Anyway, just a thought for 7 p.m. Central tonight. So, yeah, we got time for a little bit more here. So we're looking at audio, and I would be remiss in my duty if I didn't go to the last clip on here. Trump calls into the Artemis crew. We haven't really talked about.
I really look forward to when we can. I look forward to seeing you in the Oval Office. I'll ask Jared to bring you over, and I'll ask for your autograph, because I don't really ask for autographs much, but you deserve that. You really are something. Everybody's talking about this. And I look forward to having you in the Oval Office at the White House, and we will celebrate your incredible achievements and triumphs. This is big. This is really big stuff. The whole world is talking about it. And if you have the time, I will certainly find the time. I've been pretty busy also, as you know, but I will absolutely find the time, and we'll get together. And I'm going to be giving you a big salute on behalf of the American people and beyond that.
That's fantastic. The Artemis crew is going further into space than a manned crew has ever done, and that's phenomenal. All right, we got Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, condemning cousin marriage. Let's go. I guess it's buffering. Happens a lot. Maybe you ought to look at that bandwidth situation. No, I don't mind poking the bear. I don't mind rattling the cage. You know me. It wouldn't be the first time, would it? Okay, so it just doesn't want to. Well, maybe we can. Okay, here we go.
Some other things that were part of this package that we may need to add in upcoming, because I think there were some things that really need. I mean, for example, Florida doesn't ban cousin marriage, and that's a hanging curveball for us to do. We need to do that. Other states have done it. I don't know why we wouldn't, but obviously that feeds in to some of the stealth jihad that we see. When you're allowing things like that, it's things that are coming in from other cultures that are not consistent with the United States culture and certainly our culture here in Florida. So this is important, but the larger issue is we have got to stop as a country importing people that reject the values of this country.
Yeah, we need to stop doing that. So I looked up, and Arkansas actually does not recognize first cousin marriage, but they don't indict people. They just say it's void. I think our legislature needs to pass a law making it a criminal matter. It's bad. More birth defects, higher infant mortality, lower IQ. It's bad. We need to stop soft peddling Islam. That makes me an Islamophobe. That you don't understand that's a made-up word. I'm Doc Washburn at the top of the hour news. Professor Steinbuck talking about the Islamization of Arkansas. 101.1, The Answer. 101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. Where you sound off and talk back at 501-401-1011. Yeah, right. Give me a break. Citing a regional source, CNN reports a deal may be reached tonight ahead of President Trump's deadline between the U.S. and Iran. Nothing's official until you hear from Trump or the White House. Here's what President Trump said this morning on Truth Social. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, well, I don't believe that. Maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? We'll find out tonight. One of the most important moments in the long, complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. Now, I got people texting me. I've got people texting me saying, it's being reported all over the place. There's a deal. Well, I mean, I don't see it on X, and I don't see it on Drudge. Hey, young Steve, would you mind closing that door? I should have. I'm hearing like noise in the background. I don't see it anywhere. CNN is reporting a deal is expected to be reached by 7 p.m. Central. Not that there is a deal, but that a deal is expected to be reached. Come on, man, give me a break. Anyway, Professor Robert Steinbuck, the only conservative law professor from the William H. Bowen School of Law, not to be confused with other William Bowen Schools of Law, the William H. Bowen School of Law, University of Arkansas, Little Rock. Well, no, they don't want us calling it Euler anymore. Oh, you're right. We'll call it what we want. William H. Bowen School of Law at Euler is on the horn with us. Now, his views and opinions are those of him himself, not necessarily anybody else at Euler, including the Board of Regents, but, you know, we all know they should be. Anyway, he's probably wondering if I'm ever going to stop filibustering. I'll try. Professor Steinbuck, what up?
How are you, my friend?
I'm kind of running around like a chicken with my head cut off, if I may use a Southern colloquialism in present company, because I got people text me say, well, looks like we're not going to hit Iran after all. Looks like there's a deal. And I'm like, I don't see any deal anywhere. What are you talking about? So
yeah, I was just checking out the news. I didn't see anything. Are they? What's that referencing?
Well, the only thing I can see is that CNN is saying, based on regional sources, they're saying that a deal may be reached before the deadline of 8 Eastern Central, 7 Central. Well, that means nothing to me.
Yeah, because the source is a little dubious, is it not?
Well, if it's a Clinton News Network, you know, I'm sorry. I know the Communist News Network. Anyway, yeah. Well, I mean, the headline here, Trump says U.S. in heated negotiations as Iran war threat deadline looms. Big deal. Anyway,
Yeah.
I want to get to your op-ed. Apparently, the Arkansas taxpayers have been funding anti-American pro-jihad professors up at University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. What is the deal for people who missed your op-ed?
Yeah, well, did you know, Doc, that up in University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, there is what they call a center, and it's the King Fahd Center on Middle Eastern Studies. I've been writing about this anti-Western indoctrination center for 2 years now, and they've got $20 million in Clinton's time, because Clinton would never turn down a dollar from a foreign government, and they got $20 million. They set up this Middle Eastern Studies Center, and don't you know it? When I did some research and took a look at the course they offered, they had some, give or take, I can't remember precisely the number, like 26 courses listed in their course offerings that have the word Islam or Arab or Muslim, all fun topics. But you want to know how many courses they had that listed Judaism, that listed Christianity, that listed the Bible. Oh, there's listed the Quran, that listed the Bible. Zero. Last time I checked, my friend, I'm no scholar of religious history. I kind of am a little bit at least, but say I'm not. Last time I checked, that the Jewish Bible, the Christian Bible, Judaism, Christianity, all also came from the Middle East. Wait, what you say? In fact, they came from the Middle East before Islam. So why is it that the
way before Islam?
Way before. Islam is something like 8th century, of course, and Christianity is 1st century, and Judaism is 1,000 years before, I think, or 2,000 years before. So how is it that they cover none of it? Why? Because it's not an education center. It's an indoctrination center. Go there, I dare you, Doc, and find any course critical of what all of the Arab nations have done in terms of exiling Jews and discriminating against Christians. Go ahead and look for those courses. You'll be looking all day long. There's a professor up there by the name of Moja Kaf. She has had on her door posted 2 comics, sort of signs, taped up on her door, one of which for years, both of which for at least a year, but if not longer, one of which for several years. And the first one says something like, well, why is it that every time someone wants to talk about the Palestinian problem and bring in a speaker, they always say, well, have you brought in someone with the Israeli perspective? But when you talk about Black history, nobody says, have you brought in somebody from the KKK? So that's the analogy. The analogy is Palestinians are to Jews as Blacks are to the KKK.
Well,
that's up on her door. Okay.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing, man. If they were actually being persecuted, if they're actually being genocided, then they wouldn't have to turn everything back asswards, if I may use the term of present company. They wouldn't have to keep making stuff up. They wouldn't have to keep lying about everything. Well,
there's so much fabrication. For example, the other sign that she had up is the canard, Palestine, from the river to the sea. Well, what river, what sea? It's the Red Sea and the
Jordan River. In other words, they want
the Mediterranean Sea. I'm sorry, and the Jordan River.
Right. In other words, they want to kill all the Jews.
Right. Well, that's the complete limits of Israel. So Palestine, river to sea, is death to Israel. That's what it is.
Well, let me take you back to October 7th, 2023.
Yeah.
And there's audio of one of these guys from Gaza stealing the phone of somebody that he just murdered and calling mom and dad back in Gaza. Mom and dad, you'll be so proud of me. I just killed 10 Jews with my own hands, and I'm calling you on the phone I took from one of them. And they're like, Allah Akbar. Oh, we are so proud of you, son. And something that a lot of people miss, because now that Hamas has been weakened, now that Israel's taken out some of their leaders, there's so many Palestinians who want to be free from Hamas. Oh, Hamas is bad. Palestinians are good. No. They all celebrated what Hamas did, and
there was overwhelming support,
right,
in Gaza for what the Palestinian terrorists did in Israel.
Absolutely.
I mean, not complete, but overwhelming.
Well, the only criticisms, I think, in an unguarded moment that some Palestinians might have on Hamas is when Hamas siphons off enough of the aid that's sent on the trucks, so that people are getting hungry, and they might criticize Hamas over that, and then be kind of upset, when Hamas, with no warning, murders their brother-in-law or their cousin or somebody for trying to get some food because they're hungry. But they don't have a problem with Hamas's goals, which is killing all the Jews. They got a problem maybe if Hamas kills a family member of theirs because, hey, man, I'm just trying to get some food for the kids. But they don't have a problem with Hamas wanting to kill the Jews.
Remember this. Hamas was elected 20 years ago in Gaza.
Yeah.
They didn't force their way. Now, once they were elected, they kept control and didn't hold elections because, the problem is if you live in an environment where people don't understand democracy, it doesn't persist. It has to be, it's a Western value that has been transferred to other places effectively, but not in the Middle East. The only truly democratic country in the Middle East is Israel. The only one.
Right. So
other countries have small pockets of democracy. They have certain positions, but no country is truly democratic other than Israel in the Middle East.
So now that we have established that Islam is bad and we think it's outrageous that the King Fahd Center is up there, and you have told me about them before, and I'm thankful for that. I think this is a situation where perhaps the legislature needs to wake up and do something about this. Have you discussed anything, because you've been doing op-eds on and off for a couple of years, have you discussed anything with anybody in the legislature? Does anybody have a taste for wanting to do something about this?
Yeah, and let me just say, I don't necessarily agree with your overarching comment about Islam in general, but there is a problem in the Middle East and perhaps elsewhere with radicalized Islam, and that's a real issue that we. Well,
radicalized is people taking seriously the exhortations in the Quran for them to be violent and kill the rest of us. I get along just great with Muslims who don't take what the Quran says seriously about violence, but I just never know who I'm dealing with.
Well, I mean, and on your second question, yes, I and others, to be clear, have been communicating with legislators for this upcoming fiscal session, which, as you know, starts, what day is today? Tuesday? Starts tomorrow. And there will be an effort to essentially restrict funding, eliminate funding, something along those lines, so that we don't have this funded King Fahd Center, Middle Eastern Center up there in Fayetteville. We had these Confucius centers that the Chinese communists implanted in our colleges. Yeah. And we finally got rid of those. There was a nation.
There was one at UCA, and they're trying to propagandize college kids with pro-communist Chinese stuff. Okay, so there is going to be a push in the fiscal session, which begins tomorrow, to try to perhaps defund to the extent that taxpayers are funding the King Fahd Center up there at U of A Fayetteville. Are you at liberty to say who might be sponsoring such legislation in the state Senate and or state House?
I don't know, so I better not at this juncture.
Okay. All right.
The bottom line. They would probably say to me, oh, you should have said so. But just to be safe, let's not. I'll come back. It'll be a reason for you to have me back on your show so we can discuss it further.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if and when they're willing to go public on this, then we definitely want to give them credit for it.
Yep. Oh, trust me. We'll do that right here on the Washburn Show. We're already breaking news just with this conversation, in fact. So we'll break more news as it happens. And all your listeners, Doc, should be aware that we have this King Fahd Middle Eastern Studies Center, which is closely allied with this Middle Eastern Studies or Middle Eastern, I think Studies Association, MESA, M-E-S-A, I think that's what it's called. And again, it's which just propagandizes, precisely like you point out. And we need to put a stop to it. the comments, incidentally, I didn't finish the story. So this Moshe Koff puts up these posters for 2 years. I've been complaining about. Well, finally, someone complained through the governor's office. It worked its way back to Fayetteville, and they told her she's got to take down those signs because they're anti-Semitic and they're discriminatory. By the way, Doc, doesn't anybody read my column up there? 2 years I've been talking about this. So it's long overdue that they put their foot down. The director of the Middle Eastern Studies Center was removed from her post in December. She was no longer the director. Then shortly thereafter, she was notified that she would likely be removed as a professor, detenured, in other words.
Yeah.
And they just did it last week, I think. They just detenured her because she said some crazy stuff on Twitter, X, whatever we call it now.
Yes.
About and she repeated some posts. Incidentally, you're going to love this. Oh, well, the legislature is afraid to do anything because they're controlled by Zionists with a lot of money. I wonder who she's talking about. Jews. She's making an anti-Semitic trope about Jews. That's what she's talking about.
Right.
And the anti-Semitism has to stop. This is now 2 examples of anti-Semitism at the King Fahd Center at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville. Our governor is one of the most pro-Jewish, pro-Israel governors I have ever seen. And that coordinates with the fact that her father, of course, is the U.S. ambassador to Israel.
Right.
So we are in a state that has a core leadership that is the opposite of anti-Semitic, and that is pro-Israel, and is pro-Jewish, and is pro-Christian, is pro-Bible, all of these things. And of course, they're all hand in hand. You have no, as the ambassador to Israel, you have no Christianity without Judaism, right?
Yeah.
These are coupled together. And yet we have this anti-Western institute at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, from which we hear repeated anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Enough is enough.
Well, I'll tell you something interesting about this. I don't know if you've heard of the Islamic dilemma, but Muslims tend to say, because their imams have told them, that the Old and New Testament, the Torah and the New Testament, have been what's corrupted because their imams have told them that.
Okay.
But try asking where that is the Quran. The Quran on several occasions has Muhammad telling people of the book, Jews, you got to follow the Torah, and Christians, you got to follow the gospel. There's nothing in the Quran saying that the Bible has been corrupted. But I will say this was fascinating to me. There's a guy named Nabil Qureshi, and he was brought up Muslim, but it was Ahmadiyya, the Ahmadiyya sect, which is a very small Muslim sect, not nearly as big as Sunni or Shiite. And they actually did believe, hey, you're supposed to be, peaceable and good to your neighbor and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, Nabil Qureshi was eventually converted to Christianity. A friend of his named David Wood that he met in college. And Nabil told David Wood something that really shocked him. So if 2 or more Christians are arguing about or just trying to find out more about a Christian doctrine, they're naturally going to open the Bible. If 2 or more Jews are kind of kibitzing about, well, what about this? What about that? They're going to look at the Torah, the Old Testament. But Nabil said if a couple of Muslims are trying to figure out, well, what is the Islamic, doctrine of this? The last thing in the world that's going to occur to them is just to open up the Quran, because the Quran is so confusing. They're going to go to their imam and ask their imam. And the imam, depending upon whether it is embarrassing or not to admit the truth, they'll tell them what he tells them. So Muslims who tell you, oh, no, you can't go by the Old and New Testament. That's all been corrupted. Just ask them, well, where's that in the Quran? What? Where does the Quran say that the Old and or New Testament has been corrupted? I don't know. Well, it doesn't. It tells people of the book, the Jews, to rely on the Old Testament and the Christians to rely on the gospel of the New Testament. Just, I wasn't planning on getting in a theological discussion today, but that's just kind of where the discussion went. Excuse me.
We never know where our discussions go. I'll tell you this. I was telling you about this professor up there, Mojikov, who had these awful signs up on her door. I need to check with them, incidentally, because she was ordered to take them down. I've got to find out if they were actually taken down.
Yeah.
Shortly after the October 7th murderous spree by Palestinian terrorists on Jews in Israel, she writes a poem that she publishes a poem on a website called Arab Lit. I presume something like Arabic literature. It's a contraction of words. And she says in it, she has it. It's titled something like "What I Need to Tell My Neighbors in Arkansas." And don't you love when something starts off? She's going to teach you. She's going to educate you, right? And she starts saying, "Listen, honey," and she repeatedly refers to the listeners as "honey." Honey, you don't know what the dispute is about. It's not about the Bible. Israel today has nothing to do with Israel from before. Really?
So,
and says the Jews in Israel are colonizers. They came in and they killed people, including the other Jews that were living there.
Oh, good grief.
I mean, this is tinfoil hat crazy. It's about as tinfoil hat crazy as the claim that Jews were offered land in Madagascar when really it was an offer by the Nazis to put them there before they'd be killed. And it never happened, by the way. But this is the kind of crazy that you hear from people reading anti-Semitic websites. That's the kind of crazy.
Before we run out of time, this female Islamic professor up there in Fayetteville who is patronizing people, calling them honey, does she have a night job as a waitress at Cracker Barrel? Is that where she picked that up? Or no, please. I don't deserve that. You're too kind. I'll be here all week. Come early Friday for the No Smoking Show. Yes. The Larry Sanders Show. Hank, hey now. All right. Well, Professor Robert Steinbuck, the only conservative law professor at Bowen School of Law at Euler, and the op-eds are every Friday morning on the Dim Gas. A reason to go
my
on.
Views, if I may say, Doc, sorry to interrupt, my views are my views alone, not necessarily of any of my employers.
Yeah, but they should be. All right.
Well, I don't disagree with that.
Appreciate you. We got to run to it. God bless you.
Bless.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, there is an update from Brian Norris in the recounts now on the Secretary of State runoff, and that is coming up. Doc Washburn Show continues right here on 101.1 The Answer. 101.1 The Answer. Doc Washer Show continues. Sound off and talk back 501-401-1011. Before we get to the announcement from Brian Norris, going through the recounts with the runoff for Secretary of State of Arkansas. People have texted me, hey, hitting Iran tonight at 7 Central is off because they've cut a deal. And I'm like, there's no evidence they cut a deal. I'm all over X, which used to be Twitter. There's no evidence that they cut a deal. Well, how you know it's not on X? So they did it anyway. I'm like, look, dude. Do you want me to tell you how I know? Because X is where news breaks. X has it before Fox News has it, before our news has it, before anybody has it. How I discovered, no, I'll tell you how I discovered it. Spring of 2014, sitting in my home in Panama City, Florida, before I even knew there was going to be a job opening at the other station across town in Little Rock. 4:43 in the afternoon, I'll never forget it. There was a tweet there on Twitter saying mass shooter at Fort Hood, Texas. And I'm like, again? Because there'd been one 5 years earlier in 2009. I couldn't believe there was another one in 2014. So I clicked on the tweet, had a link to a TV station. I can't remember the TV station was Waco, Texas, or Killeen Temple, Texas, but both are about the same distance from Fort Hood. So I clicked on the link to the TV station, TV news operation. They had suspended local programming. They're broadcasting live from outside Fort Hood, and there was a mass shooter out there, spring of 2014. So I turned on, there were 2 talk radio stations at the time, Panama City, Florida. So I turned on 2 radios. It's back when people used to have radios in their homes. And I turned on, Sean Hannity was on one station, and a guy named Todd Schnitt out of Tampa was on the other station. And I'm like, well, they got to have, this is a huge story, you know, mass shooter in Fort Hood. They didn't have it. So now the Panhandle of Florida is Central Time, just like we are. So at 5 o'clock, both shows went off. Top of the hour news came on. Fox News Radio was on one station, ABC Radio News on the other station. I'm like, oh, top of the hour news, they'll have it. It's been 17 minutes by this point. Fox News Radio didn't have it, and ABC Radio News didn't have it. I'm like, wait, what? So at 5:06, Mark Levin came on one station. Andy Dean was a syndicated radio talk show host nationwide there for a while. He came on the other station. Neither one of them had it until about 18 after, out of the first commercial break. And that's all he talked about, because that was a huge, huge story. And it dawned on me, okay, wait, if I had been on the radio that day, instead of being between radio jobs, and I'm looking at Twitter and they're not, I would have scooped this huge story. I would have scooped 4 nationally syndicated radio talk show hosts and 2 national radio news networks by 35 minutes with the biggest story of the month. So I say all that to answer your question. Well, how do you know that Trump and Iran haven't made a deal just because it's not on X? Because it would be on X. I mean, ABC News at 1:21 this afternoon. So that's almost 3.5 hours ago, right? No, almost 4.5 hours ago. Just in, some progress is being made in negotiations with Iran as President Trump's self-imposed Tuesday night deadline for Iran to make a deal or face massive U.S. attacks draws closer. 2 officials tell ABC News. Oh, unnamed sources. Yeah, we'll go with that. And again, they're not saying the deal. There's a deal. There's some progress. Some progress. And you got anonymous people out there saying there's a deal. But there's nothing. Bill Malugin? Okay, all right. I'll check Bill Malugin. No, we're going to get to Brian Norris' statement about the recounts. Okay, Bill Malugin at Fox. Let me see. Because I got the CNN website up. I've got Drudge Report up. Nobody has anything. No, I'll repeat it for the folks in the back who are paying attention. Nobody has anything. Okay, fine. I'll do the Fox News website. But I'm telling you, nobody has anything. Live updates, Fox News, big headline, clock ticking, Trump cites heated negotiations as deadline for Iran infrastructure strikes loom. Well, as a buddy of mine said, he's given them plenty of time. Wait a minute. Live coverage. Trump says he's suspending bombing for 2 weeks. Is that today or was that earlier? I'm clicking on it. Oh, no. No, we're not going to listen to a live stream. Nobody else has that. Oh, wait, this is more interesting. Cooper flag rises. Anthony Edwards falls. Jokic dethrones Wemby and SGA on King of the Hill. Interesting. That Cooper flag, man, he's something else. Well, I'm sorry. No, you're right. I'm easily diverted. Senate Democrats break with pushing Trump 25th Amendment removal over Iran comments. Senate Democrat breaks with pushing. The Congress can't do the 25th Amendment. Idiots. No, we already explained that. I'm tired of that. I'm sick and tired of it. Am I starting to sound too much like Dr. Savage? Yeah, I'm bored with this. Let me talk about meatball recipes. Yeah, let me talk about my dog Teddy. It sounds like Savage with a Southern accent. Excuse me. All right. So Brian Norris for Secretary of State, Arkansas, in his latest post from a little bit earlier this afternoon, he says, my legal counsel has advised me not to accept the results of the Saline County recount. This is not about refusing an outcome I do not like. It is about refusing to pretend that election laws do not matter when they are allegedly broken during the recount process itself. Have you heard about this anywhere else? No, I didn't think so. According to my attorney and designated representative, Arkansas law was violated during the recount. My representative was denied the ability to properly observe the counting of ballots from the distance required by law. When an objection was raised, he was not given the priority viewing required under Arkansas statute. Instead, he was locked out of the viewing area. Well, let me just, before I continue, let me digress for just a minute here. I've been hearing for years that the Republican Party of Arkansas recruited Democrats to run as Republicans. And I've been hearing for years that Saline County was solid blue for a long, long time. Well, now it looks like they're acting like they're still solid blue. You can't do this. Not get away with it. Hey, will somebody call Attorney General Tim Grit? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe they can get away with it. He also had, yeah, Tim, I said it. He also has serious concerns that ballots were handled by individuals who were not authorized to do so, and that at least one poll worker was counting ballots without first taking the oath required by law. The people of Arkansas deserve recounts that are lawful, transparent, and beyond question. When the rules are not followed, confidence in the process is damaged. That is exactly why these laws exist. Due to all that is stated above, the campaign will not accept a recount process in Saline County that failed to meet the standards required by Arkansas law. The voters of Saline County deserve better, and so does every voter in the state. Yeah. Well, there you go. You know, it wouldn't be the first time that somebody in power in Arkansas breaks the law and basically looks at all the rest of it and says, what are you going to do about it? Just the good old boys. That's the music I always used to play at the other station when I would start a segment on Saline County. Let's see. A friend of mine responding to that saying Saline County is as corrupt as the day is long. You shouldn't be surprised that all that happened when the county clerk of Saline County broke the law when he essentially appointed Trevor Valines to succeed him as the next county clerk since he's not running for re-election. He gave a quote to the Saline Courier where he stated he just decided the day prior to when filing ended that he wasn't going to run. Campaign filing reports show Trevor Valines accepted campaign contributions in October. Filing didn't end until the first part of November. Just the good old boys. I wonder if Trevor's related to Buddy. Just about have to be, wouldn't he? I mean, unless Valines is as common a surname here in Central Arkansas as Smith, and I don't think it is. All right. Interesting. Interesting. Well, it's a shame that they would act like that. Oh, yeah, allegedly. Sure. Yeah, allegedly. For all our criminal defense attorney friends listening in. And another one says, sounds like the good old boys of Saline County are up to some shenanigans. Yeah. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Somebody else says, please, Arkansas Secretary of State Cole Jester, demonstrate authority and authenticity as Secretary of State and deal with bad actors with force, please. Well, now, I don't think they're going to do that. He's still in his 20s. He's just going to do what Sarah wants him to do, right? I mean, until I see some kind of evidence to the contrary. That's a shame. All right. If you want to get into the conversation, number to call is 501-401-1011. The Doc Washer Show continues. Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer. 101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. Sound off and talk back 501-401-1011. Got more audio clips here. Todd Blanche is the acting AG. He's the deputy AG. Pam Bondi has hit the bricks. Todd Blanche doing a press conference today, and he wanted everybody to know the DOJ is fighting fraud, and fraud is massive.
The Department of Justice is holding criminals accountable for stealing over $500 million from taxpayers. And across our U.S. attorney's offices all over this country, we currently have over 8,000 fraud matters underway. Unfortunately, as you've heard a lot about recently, because it's true, these cases represent a fraction of the fraud ripping off our country every day. Thanks to the leadership of President Trump, this department, working closely with the task force to eliminate fraud, is supercharging efforts to take down every fraudster and bring them to justice.
Well, I wonder if he's thinking about investigating Pfizer or Moderna. I'm just kidding. You know they're not going to do that. All right, Todd Blanche talking about the weaponization of DOJ.
When you talk about weaponization, and it's become a word that is supposedly that when we talk about ending weaponization, as if that's a bad thing for us to do. Okay, people in this room for 4 years, some of you, same people, sat here with the last administration when you saw a weaponization of this department, the likes of which had never been seen in history. And some of you are looking down now. And I get it, because you had a president who was indicted 4 times by this department. You had a president who along with this department had assistance. So this department helped 2 other local DAs go after the president. You had this department who stood idly by while states tried to keep President Trump off the ballot. Okay, that's what happened the past 4 years. And so when I'm asked questions or when I see reporting about shock and awe at this supposed weaponization of this Department of Justice, it means nothing to me because it's completely false.
Now, talking about the being weaponized, the DOJ, reporters getting ready to ask him a stupid question. Have we got it?
You said earlier that this Department of Justice has indicted the President Trump 4 times. Can you explain what you base that statement on? Because obviously you now run this department. Are you basing that on your experience as a defense lawyer for the president, or are you basing that?
I read what you wrote. What kind of question is that? He got indicted 4 times. He got indicted in Florida, and then he got indicted in D.C., and then they superseded in Florida, and then they superseded in D.C. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's not, am I breaking news there that he got indicted 4 times by the feds? This department indicted him 4 times.
Some reporters are stupid. Let the record reflect. I'm Doc Washburn. See you tomorrow at 4:06. God willing. The great Dave Ellswick up at 7:06 in the morning. 101.1 The Answer.